Okay, I recently watched this video, How to Get Boys to Love Writing Again by Echo Chamberlain. Now, I've never watched any of his other videos. I don't know anything about this person, but I wanted to add to his video. Now, I'm a math teacher. He's talking about writing, but this part right here that I'm about to play really resonated with me, and then I'll add in my own thoughts. Here, just take a listen.
The conveners and judges of these competitions have a terrible blind spot where they don't understand the extent to which mainstream boys hate themes of identity and identity politics. They don't dislike it, they don't shrug their shoulders at it, they hate it. It is the antithesis of cool. The content they consume online is often full of biting satire about it, to an extent such judges and conveners have no comprehension of. It is killjoy, uptight, and priggish to them. Therefore, such competitions with their previous winners give off a vibe of being lame. This perception is reinforced.
So he's talking about writing competitions specifically, and it was very to the point and very true. Boys in school today, in particular middle and high school, really hate themes of identity. They really don't like this heavy focus on social emotional learning that we push on kids. And he's talking about in writing competitions, different girls will win the competitions because they're talking about their own experiences within a school, within their society. You know, for example, there'll be a girl who's a lesbian or she's from another country and how she's coping with those things. And those are the people who always win the writing competitions. I really highly recommend you watch this video. Again, I don't know anything about this person, so I have no thoughts on them, but this video in particular is very good. Now, he's got 63K subscribers. However, so you might think, you know, how is the old Nike going to help this guy out? However, I don't think he's got a gaming audience, and I think if you are either a teacher or you play video games, this should relate to you because it's more about creativity and boys and society in general. Now, I mostly worry about math education, and it is really rough these days. As a teacher, something has always bothered me about education with how we treat boys, in particular preteen boys. I teach 7th grade math. Now, I'm going to try to not dox myself, so some of the things I say throughout this video, I'm going to tweak some numbers slightly. You know, for all you know, I teach 8th grade math, just because I don't want to dox myself, and I definitely don't want any student of mine ever watching this and knowing I'm talking about them. So some information will be tweaked, but just know that the general thrust of what I'm saying is true. Now, I'm not a very good liar, so I'm going to do my best to keep track of my own white lies, but that's just more for privacy reasons. Any general concept of what I'm talking about, I'm not exaggerating to tell a story when I get to these stories. So, so before I get to my spreadsheet, because I always have a spreadsheet, I want to talk about a bit about the state of current schools and what I've seen. So, you know, first, the fact is many 12-year-old boys are annoying. You know, it's just true. We all were. We're filled with energy. We're filled with angst, added some hormones, and you got a recipe for some really weird interactions. Now, a large part of school is teaching kids how to behave, how to get along with others, what's appropriate, what is not appropriate. And, you know, for example, I had a student who randomly just started shouting Haktua repeatedly in math class. Now, if you watch my recent streams, I talked about it. And it's my job to convince this kid that shouting about blowjobs in school is wrong. You know, it's not appropriate and it's not the place or the time. And by the time we're adults, we typically figured out that, you know, you do that when you're online playing a video game. You know, now 30-year-olds that I used to raid in World of Warcraft with can't stop shouting it. But at least you're not at work. You're not in a cubicle. We're not all quiet and learning. You're in a space that makes sense to do that. Now, I think the largest problem with modern education is actually discipline, and this video has nothing to do with that. And I think every teacher knows it. So I just want to show some things. Well, before I get into discipline, the U.S. rank in math is 24th as a country. In the past 2 years, our reading scores, according to this website, have gone down from 220 to 215, and our math scores have gone from 241 to 234. So we're trending downward. And according to this website here, 21% of adults, so 1/5 of U.S. adults, cannot compare, contrast information, paraphrase, or make low-level inferences. That's a massive percentage. You know, I know I'm a math teacher. 20% 1/5. This is coming up towards 1 out of 4 people, adults. This is illiterate if you can't do these things. You are functionally illiterate. It's not good. Sorry. Back to discipline. I don't have something to show you while I talk about discipline. But every teacher knows that that's a problem. And I think if any teacher denies that discipline's a massive problem in our schools, they're lying for ideological reasons. And the fact is, we can't hold a kid back. We can't really punish them unless they're doing drugs or they're violent. That's the only time we can really punish them. Otherwise, the consequences are we call home and we maybe do in-school suspension. You know, if the kid doesn't care about consequences from their parents or they don't care about being yelled at by a teacher, they've won. And by they've won, I mean there's nothing we can really do as a school to get them to comply to our school rules. And you might think, okay, well, what school rules are we talking about? Again, I'm going to try to be vague, but if a student talks while I talk, they skip class, they swear at their classmate, they ignore all schoolwork, meaning they're failing all of their classes, they ignore any directions from teachers, they ignore directions from the principals, they run in the hallways, they wander the hallways during class, before class, after class, they knock on doors, pound on doors, knock over garbage cans. If a teacher sees them and says, hey, can you pick that up? They, just run away and ignore them, and just generally acting like a menace. What do you think should be done in that situation? Viewer, let me know in the comments, and what would have been done to you when you went to school. Now, I'm a millennial, so I'm not that old. It's not like they would have beat me, but the principal would have called home and my father would have beat the shit out of me. He never once spanked me because I behaved pretty well overall. But if I crossed lines like that, I went that far in terms of disrespect, my ass would have been grass. But what happens today, well, today we call home, we give in-school suspension, so that's ISS, and that's about it. Maybe, lunch detention. So they don't get to eat lunch with their friends. They get to go eat in a room by themselves. Let me think. Yeah. So, and you might think, okay, well, can we suspend them? Like, say you don't get to come back to school. Can we do after-school detention? After-school detention. Well, in the past 3 districts I've ever worked at, this is not a thing. I'm going to make this shade of red. No after-school detention. And suspensions are only for fights and drugs. That's if you're not fighting and you're not doing drugs, it's off the table. It's not an option. So everything I named, including throwing garbage cans on the floor, flicking off your teacher, whatever you want, these are our options. That's our repertoire. If the kid doesn't care about those, they already don't want to be in class. They don't care about ISS. You call home, nobody cares. That's the problem. If somebody cared, the kid wouldn't be behaving this way. Now, what's the solution to this? I don't know. Honestly, the only solution I can think of is to send this kid to the lithium mine. Say, hey, Elon wants some batteries. Get to work. If you have a better idea, again, seriously, let me know in the comments, because currently these boys are going to drop out when they get to high school. And I'm talking about 6th, 7th, and 8th grade right now. I work in a middle school. They're going to drop out, and then after they drop out, they're going to end up in jail after stealing or hurting someone. I'm not kidding. And I don't know what a good solution is outside of a serious crackdown on discipline where a large number of kids are made an example of. And what I mean is they have to be kicked out of school. I don't know. I really have no idea. And the fact is, we don't have the political will to do something like that. Unless a kid has been fighting or doing drugs, they're staying in the school. It doesn't matter if they don't attend a single class. I remember the first school I ever worked at, there was just always about a dozen boys wandering the hallways all day, literally not attending a single class all day. Why do we even let them in the building? You've missed 50 classes. Maybe you just get to stay home for them next month. Come back when you're ready to actually come to school. I don't know. Again, is that a solution? That's what they want. I don't know. I really don't know. And with all this said, I'm not talking about special education. I'm not talking about kids who have diagnosed disabilities, who have IEPs. That's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about kids who simply can't be touched. They run the school because they know nothing can be done to them. So I'm not talking about special education because I'm not really an expert in that, and I'm just not going to add. I don't really have much to say about it. So I also want to say at not the current school I work at, but the one previous. I don't work there anymore, but we had kids who needed escorts, and so when they need to go to the bathroom, let me explain escorts. So you have misbehaving kid, and there's multiple of these. If they want to go to the bathroom, get water, go to locker. I didn't say bathroom right. Or do whatever, you have to call the office. A principal or administrator needs to come to your room to escort them to one of these things, to the bathroom. Because if they don't, they won't make it back to class. Seriously. So you have a professional, someone who makes more money than I do because they're an administrator. I don't make a ton of money as a teacher. And back at that school, I was making about $40K a year. This person who escorting them is probably making about 65 to 85, depending on how long they've been working. So at this school, you have someone who's making, let's say, $70,000 a year, whose job is to walk around and escort the toughest kids to the drinking fountain. And as a teacher, they ask you to go to the bathroom, and you have to stop teaching and go pick up the phone and call the office and say, hey, XYZ needs to go down to the bathroom. Can you come and escort him? It's a huge waste of time. And I'm not talking about 8-year-olds. I'm talking about 14-year-olds, 13-year-olds. When I was 14, I could drive a car. Not that I did much, but I drove a car the first time I think I was 12. I was responsible enough. I worked a job at 14. And I wasn't the most mature or responsible. I really wasn't. I had a lot of dumb things I did in my youth, like we all did. But the fact is, we can't even hold kids to a standard, at least at this school, where we can expect them to go to the bathroom and return to class. It's way too far. It's gotten totally out of control. Okay, that was my rant about discipline. The next big thing which is connected to this video, is how we treat boys. In middle schools across the country, many of them have removed recess or free time at lunch. The last 2 schools I've worked at have 20-minute lunches, and they're highly structured. Get your food, stay in your seat, don't stand up, and then they're dismissed in rows. When I went to school, I'm pretty sure I had a 30-minute lunch and like a 20-minute recess after that, where we just got to go outside and hang out, or if it was cold, we went downstairs and hung out. We had a lot of free time. Now, though, especially at the last school I worked at, if we didn't do that, there'd be fights. If we let kids outside, there's going to be a fight. Now, in my opinion, let them fight, kick them out of school, because that's the only way we can do this. Suspend them. The only way you can suspend or expel them, you're never holding anyone back. They can fail every class. They don't know how to read. They don't know how to add. They don't know 2 times 4. Doesn't matter. Have fun in 9th grade. Have a blast. But if they're fighting, then you can kick them out. That's the one thing. If they're violent, if they're literally a criminal, you can kick them out. Now, fact is, I think it's our job as educators to worry about the 95 to 99% of kids who behave in a reasonable way. Every kid misbehaves sometime. I know I got detention a couple times. I was horsing around. I'd push my friends. We'd run in the hallway. We goof off. You're kids. Kids goof off. But what I'm describing, I didn't need an escort to go to the bathroom. I would go to the bathroom and then I'd go back to class. And I think you did too, who's ever listening. And so what do we do? First, I think you should really watch this whole video. Now, in terms of writing, I think that's a great video. He has a lot of great points. I'm a math guy. I feel like I'm doing well in my own classroom. As for a whole country, I don't really know what to do with math other than we got to fix discipline. It's all about discipline with math. With literacy and writing, it's probably something he's got a lot of great ideas. It is the first time I've heard someone really address the differences between boys and girls in that video, and really the differences in how we treat them. I highly recommend you watch it. It's simply better than this video because it's going to offer solutions, and I don't really have solutions beyond what I list here. And most of these, they're not going to make a huge difference. First, to help boys in particular, they need more recess. They need outlets for their energy. They need more competition. We need to be able to provide that for boys. Now, if you're a teacher, obviously this is hard to do. It's hard to put that in your lessons, but when you can, do it. Again, I said watch this other video. It's better than mine. We also, with the discipline, we have to hold high and consistent expectations. And when kids don't meet them, we need to show them the door. The fact is, right now, all of our rules, like don't throw the garbage bin on the floor, that is not a rule. It's a guideline. Because if it was a rule, at the end of the day, you can get kicked out. And you might say, what? You got kicked out just for throwing a garbage can on the floor? No, absolutely not. But if you do it every day, you told the teacher to pick it up for you and you flip them the bird and run away, at some point, breaking those rules has to end up in you getting kicked out. It has to. If I get a speeding ticket, I'm not going to jail. I'm going to pay it. Life goes on. But if you don't pay your speeding ticket and you keep getting them and you keep breaking those rules, at some point you end up in jail. The fact is, it's not a recommendation. It's not a guideline. It's a law. If you break the law, you go to jail. It needs to be, if you break the rules and you keep breaking the rules and you don't come down and agree, okay, I'm going to stop wandering the hallways, I'm going to get to class on time, you at least come to some agreement, then you can't go to school anymore. It has to be like that. There is no other way. What we're doing right now is not working. Next, I think bring back dodgeball. It's ridiculous that every school, at least that I've ever worked at, doesn't have dodgeball. It's been totally banned. Even when I was a student, it was banned I think my senior year. Completely ridiculous. And I think, some of our punishment for behaviors like horsing around and running, like sometimes we're given like lunch detention or ISS because kids will like shove each other. It's like this makes work feel like a prison. We do not need to treat 12-year-old boys like prisoners because they're acting like 12-year-old boys. So I know when I talk about discipline, you might be thinking this guy's a psychopath. He wants to crack down on every minor behavior. No, kids should not feel like teachers hate them. We don't hate kids. I love kids. It's the only reason I do this job. And 99% of the kids at the school I currently work at don't do the things I'm talking about. They do horse around, they do run, they do kid things. When I'm talking, they're chit-chatting with their friends. But if I ask them to stop, if I give them a look, at some point, they stop talking and they look at me and they're ready to learn. I have kids in my room right now, today, who will literally never stop talking unless I kick them out of class. I don't know what to do. I'm actually at a loss with them. How do you teach that? Do I kick them out of class every day? Do I teach over them? I called home. We've given them lunch detention. Are we going to give them ISS? What are we going to do? Are we going to suspend them because they're talking in class? They literally, no matter what, will continue talking again and again and again and totally ignoring me. I think this is what I was talking about, the high expectations here. When they push that boundary, it needs to be, okay, leave class. And if you keep doing it, okay, come back next week. You have to be able to follow the rules. And that doesn't mean if you break the rules once or twice, you get suspended. But at some point, there needs to be real consequences, not lunch detention where you just ignore it and ditch it anyway. So we have to more seriously punish serious behaviors. The kids who skip class every day, who destroy property, who are disrespectful, and it's those repeated behaviors. There needs to be actual consequences for that. And you might think I'm talking about my own school. Where I currently work is actually doing pretty well. Like, there is consequences. They are doing a great job, my administrators, which is not common in public schools. However, the last school I worked at, it had pretty much fallen. Total disaster. Like I said, dozens of kids wandering the hallways. The amount of kids who are not getting any education whatsoever in that school is way too high. Okay, I mostly talked. I don't know why this couldn't just be like a podcast instead of a video, but yeah, watch this guy's video. It's great. Thanks for watching.